Hello and welcome back in the Challengers room. I hope you had a great lunch and enjoyed it. We have a great lineup for you this afternoon, so app and tweet your friends and colleagues to visit this room as well. If you tweet and find new insights, please use hashtag #DigitEMEA. If you have questions, you can use the Webit, the app you have to ask questions. I will ask them for you to the speakers, or we have a microphone and we'll walk up to you. But to speed it up, we would ask you if you would use the tool. We are challenging the status quo. We are challenging marketing, business, and innovation. I'm very happy that she's here. We were able to fly her in. She's the CEO and founder of Capital Aid. She's also a famous speaker and author. Please give her a warm applause. Soulaima Gourani.
So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I really love being here, so thank you so much. So let's go back. First of all, none of us can predict the future. Let me ask you one simple question. I haven't yet found any companies that can actually answer my question. If you look at your company, what skills will you need 5 years from now? No one knows. 3 years ago, you could not make it for a living if you were a blogger. Today, it's probably the most powerful people in the world are bloggers. So let's just go 10 years back in time. It was absolutely possible to go down to an agency and ask for a campaign. You could buy your clients, you could actually also earn them, and you could also own them with your loyalty programs. It's not like that anymore. You need to know how to create fans. But how do you create fans? Well, first of all, you don't have any fans until that day where at least one of your clients or customers or employees have tattooed your logo on their arm, okay? Unless you have no fans. This is actually 3 years ago, I took an organization to Denmark. It's called Global Dignity. I'm the chair of that organization. It's a worldwide organization. 3 weeks after I took that organization to Denmark, the first photo of this young girl came into my mailbox, and she actually tattooed dignity. It says værdighed in Danish. Of course, she's going to regret it, but there's at least one person who have tattooed something I have said. So when you ask young people what they think about the private sector, they would actually put the private sector in the same pool as they put producers of tobacco and bombs. So the whole public and private sector actually has a trust problem. So what can you do about it? Well, some of you might know that McDonald's, they had this picture that was going viral on the social media a few years ago. This is, if you don't know it, it's McNuggets before they are fried. If you thought it was chicken, I'm gonna disappoint you. Well, I have nothing against McDonald's. Actually, a few years ago, until very recently, there has never been a war between two countries who had a McDonald's franchisee agreement between two countries. So McDonald's is actually more peacemaking than UN. So I have nothing against McDonald's. But what is the learning from this situation? Well, the learning is that every employee is now a photographer. They can document things. So there's no such thing as IP rights or can you just write this NDA? It's not going to work in the future. So how can you think out of the box if you're still inside the box? A few years ago, I was in China and I talked to the Minister of Education in China. And he told me that he had forced 15,000, as you know, in China you can force people to do stuff, and he forced 15,000 teachers to go out in the world to 15,000 different places to observe how education should look like in China, not in 2020, but actually the year after. So I tried to find out how many Danish teachers have actually done the same in Denmark, where I'm from, and it's 0. So the thing is, what do we actually do to get knowledge to learn from others? It's unbelievable how much time a company today spent on doing benchmarking. You know, what does competitors do? And it's the worst thing you can do. If you only look at other companies, it's going to be the same shit, right? Benchmarking is not worth your time. So what about hiring CEOs? Most companies today acquire senior people, they pay them a lot of money, and they really embrace the whole thing about competences, routines, but it's actually not a good thing. I just came back from Tel Aviv doing some research just to find out whether people with big titles are actually more entitled to, be paid more money. And we gave them a very simple task. We gave them some pasta, some marshmallows, and we asked them to build a high tower. And the thing is, it was on time, so they were a little bit stressed on time. As you might see, the architects and engineers, they outperformed everyone, and I'm happy, frankly. But the thing is, if you look at kindergarten children and CEOs, you might actually see that the children are outperforming the CEOs. So every time I meet a CEO, I feel the need to give him a big hug and feel sorry for him, because kids are actually better at doing tasks. And why is that? It's because kids are not discussing who's going to be the leader. They just execute. And this is kind of interesting, because when you look into the most brilliant companies within the past 5 years, they are all established by young men, women, and all of them, most of them are children of immigrants. And why is it like that? Well, there's been done some research from US showing that people who are hungry, who have low self-esteem, who have had parents that work a lot, they are more entitled to build successful companies. So I think that's kind of interesting. So when it comes to innovation, why is it so difficult? Well, it's because we cannot predict the future, and we don't think outside the box. For instance, who would have known that the fastest growing industry right now is products that do not exist? When you go on the internet, you will find that you can buy products and services that it's not even tangible. It's a growing business. Or what about data? Like, data are now more worth than gold and oil. How about that? I mean, I'm the CEO of a bank. I established a bank 7 months ago. Who would have thought I could establish a bank? Well, if you have access to data, you can do a better risk analysis than any banks. So interruption and disruption is happening from everywhere. So let's just take Uber. You know that pretty well in Istanbul. The thing is, it's worth more than Toyota. It's still trying to be banned, for instance, in Denmark. The thing about Uber is they have no assets. They have barely any people employed. Another thing is, when you look into WhatsApp, I don't know if you use WhatsApp, but it's a good friend of mine who established that company a few years ago, and it was required for $19 billion US. And the thing is, they only have 40 employees. So the thing is, the whole marketplace for future of business is changing rapidly. Or what about Uber, Alibaba, Facebook, Airbnb, just to mention a few of them? No assets, lots of market value. And I mean, if you look at the 20 biggest company in Denmark right now, they're fighting. They're really trying to get 1 billion Danish kroner in revenue. These companies already outperformed them, and they have been around for more than 100 years. So what is it that we have to look at? First of all, we have to think about who are we recruiting, and how is the energy level in the company. The fun thing is, if you want to have the recipe, like the one-liner of a successful company, it can actually be found in one sentence. If you have a lot of competence, it's good. But if you have too much competence and routine, it's going to be slowing down your company. What you really need is to find the balance between routine and expectations. Young people bring in expectations. But the funny thing is, we tend not to employ young people in senior positions, which is very wrong. And what about success? I have found out that people have nothing against success as long as we don't know the people who are successful. So we also have to think about how to really engage companies and people who are really successful. So another challenge for you as a marketing person, as a CEO or company owner, your biggest challenge right now is actually the attention span. Because since 2012, we can see that people are not anymore able to keep attention. I mean, you probably look into your phone 78 times per day. We actually found out that young people, they even text while they have sex, you know. It's really changing the way we live. The thing is, now you have to communicate everything you have to say in less than 8 seconds. 8 seconds is not a lot of time. So, and you might think 8 seconds, well, I can deal with that, that's good enough. You know what, a goldfish is able to keep it for 9 seconds. So it's just to say, you know, it's really a challenge right now, just not only to predict the future, the business models, and the old business models are actually already outdated. So how can you communicate a very funny, memorable, exciting message in less than 8 seconds? Well, it's really something you have to think about. This label of this brand, of this wine, might be, as I think, the best communication platform ever in less than 8 seconds. So what about, speaking of wine, it's not because I'm thirsty, it's just because wine is really interesting to look into, because we have a lot of, attention to expensive wines versus cheap wine. I did a research on Yale last year, finding out that if you serve a bottle of wine and you label one for $10 and one for $100, you might, assume that more people would like the expensive wine, and they did. The thing is, it was the same wine that we did serve them. When you do brain scanning, and you have to remember that now it's really an exciting time for you guys if you work with marketing, because we have never known more than we do today about what's going on in the human brain. Even in a men's brain, something is happening. I'm a feminist, I'm from Denmark. Anyway, so the thing is, when you look into brain scans, it's amazing, it's really interesting. When you look into price, if you take the cheap wine versus the expensive wine, it's funny, but the brain reacts positively to the expensive wine, and it tastes even better, although it's the same wine. So if you want another punchline from me, keep it expensive. Okay, that's another thing. That's if you want to do it fast. We did a research also at the airport in Copenhagen up in Aalborg, and lots of people were parking illegally, and it was like taking a lot of time and resources, and then we found out, let's do the signing a little bit more fun. Like, don't keep the car there for too long, so kisses and goodbye cannot be above 3 minutes. And the thing is, we've removed all the illegal parking, and people stopped parking their cars when they were not supposed to do it. So kind of humor is something that is moving people, because we don't remember, this you cannot do. We actually know that young people, they don't read you, this was going to make you die. They read, this is going to make me strong and look good. So you have to change your the way you communicate. Trust is the most needed thing in business these days, especially if you want to communicate to the younger generation. Trust is something you really have to think about. If you want like another punchline for good marketing for these years, it is to have a high-tech platform, and it's to have a high touch. So have to find out if people have human contact, make sure it's the best human contact they can imagine, like the best service, but the technology is actually also going to be a very high level. Alibaba, I think, is an amazing company. They have one rule: no features are allowed to be implemented unless Jack knows how to use them, because he's not very good at technology. So instead of hiring someone that's really good, get that person on board who's really bad at it, and if he can find out, your clients can find out. I don't know about how you grew up, but I assume that when you were a little child, you were told not to go to any car with strangers in the car and take candy from that person. I assume that's a global thing. So it's in the human brain that we don't trust anyone that we don't know, and we only like the people that looks like ourselves. So it's really important to look into how people see your company. I am also working with a big insurance company. I'm the head of architect for the customer service. And we have found out that if you do handwriting, it's more likely that people are up to 70% more loyal after they have received something handwritten from your company, because handwriting is something that really goes into our heart. So again, high touch, high touch. When you look into what company should you look to for inspiration? Well, I think Nutella is quite an interesting example. It's a bad product, but they sell what is equal to the Chinese wall every year, so lots of people actually eat this. And the thing is, they have 16 million likes. It's just a chocolate cream. What do? They're very good at engaging their customers. Like, you can upload pictures, they're going to comment it, and it's giving a feeling of belonging to a strong community. And the young people, they are on the mobile. If you're not mobile, you are not existing. They don't use home pages, they just use their mobile. 2 years ago, I did a research in Denmark showing that young people spend 80% of the time when they have a bus ride on the phone. Actually, we're not even looking up anymore. Conversations are going through the phone. And if you might think, well, young people is not a challenge, they cannot disrupt in my business. Well, look at Martha. Martha is 9 years old. She lives in UK, and she decided last year to to take a photo every day of her school meal, because the school meal in UK is really, really bad. And she took a photo and she put it up on her blog, because when you're 9 years old, you have your own blog, okay? And she gave it a health rating 2 out of 10. She's not being not nice. She's very fair because of her cucumbers. She gives it a rating 2. And the thing is, the mayor asked her to close down the blog. She refused. The principal of her school asked her to close it down. Otherwise, he's going to take her out of school. She refused. And today, she actually is the head of strategy for the school food in UK. And she's 10 years old now. So if you think that young people cannot disrupt your business, think of Martha. The biggest and fastest growing retail store right now is Hointer.com. Hointer.com is like a business, a shop for jeans for men. And you go into the shop, there's no people employed, no human contact, the men loves it. Not a lot of jeans, and when you see a pair of jeans, you scan it, it goes into your fitting room. If you like it, they ship it directly to your home address. Why is that so successful? Well, behind me here you see Ruben Abraham. He's a professor of Indian School of Business. And they have done some interesting research. If you want to sell anything to a man, make sure you don't give him more than 3 options, because if you give a man more than 3 options, he's more unhappy with the choices. So again, it's like we know so much more about the human brain than we did 5 years ago. And here I'm trying to ask him to select a wine, and he cannot because there's too much of options. What we see now around the world is a growing interest in interacting with customers through the mobile. If you go to Finland, if you check in, if you take a photo of the food that you're getting served, you get a 50% discount. We have stores in Denmark where you go in, you take free products. It's totally free. You can take as much as you like. The only thing you have to ensure is that you're going to go home, put it on Twitter what you think about the products. So it's a whole new way of engaging. Like now we have cafes, no people employed. You just go, use your phone, pick your coffee, and that's will be no people serving you. Young people love this. British Gas, I'm working with energy companies to make sure that young people are more engaged in energy consumption. And gamification is just working well. All young people love gaming, and if you put that into your business model, you are highly more effective and successful. Six Senses Hotel, probably one of the most successful business ideas around the world. What did they do? Well, they identified the piss-off factors from all hotel guests in the world, and what they did was they removed the piss-off factors. So, but the thing is, lots of us, we don't even know what is pissing our customers off, because we didn't try to be a client ourselves in our own company, so that's a good way to start. China, this is a little boy, he's going to give his audience away, and he's very sick. And this is an amazing photo because they're actually bowing and paying him the last respect. This photo is interesting because if you want to know how your customer service and engagement is in your company, you should understand how are you reacting when nobody is looking, because that's where you have the right DNA. This is a baker from a small city in Denmark. You might see the hands of this man's back. Actually, this gentleman, he gets a hug every time he goes into the bakery to buy some bread. This bakery had decided that if people look like someone that needs a hug, they will get one. And it's the most successful baker in Denmark. The bread is average, but you get a touch. We actually also tried to, I'm going to round up 1 minute more. The thing is, a train station in Denmark, the biggest one in Copenhagen, people were throwing garbage all over, and we tried to tell them not to do that. But by showing a picture of who is cleaning up, Bo is his name, people stopped throwing garbage, right? Because it's Bo who's cleaning up, it's just not a person, it's Bo. And they got sympathy with that guy. When you present your company, make sure it has a high touch. This is a teacher book from US. Pictures are not inappropriate, but the way they have put them together makes it interesting. Most of us will think this is a fun school. Let's go and have a visit, right? So it's a whole way of engaging that is interesting. But what you cannot do is do what you do today or do nothing. This requires totally new skills, and I want to give you one last advice. What you should do is to make sure that you have an advisory board that represents young people, all 5 generations, sitting side by side, giving you advice on how the future is going to look like and how you should engage with future clients. But you have to acknowledge that young people, they might not have paper on it, but they are more skilled than you are. That's when it's going to be successful in your company. Thank you very much for listening so carefully.
I told you firework after lunch. I hope everybody is awake. When we met, I said, you must be my sister from another mother. Yes. I think we were the kids that went out in the park and said, give me candy or I will shout police. Break the rules, change the status quo. And I think it's a very good point. We talk a lot in corporate companies, but we have to act simple. Just invite a few little kids that have a different view and your business will change. But I think there are some questions for Soulaima. Who has a question?
Did you get something out of it? I cannot see you, but yeah. I saw less phones active, so that's a good sign.
Yeah? You sure? No questions? I don't see hands. I have one for you.
Otherwise, Igor, you can take your question. Otherwise, you should know I'm going to respond to all your questions as long as I live, as long as you put it on Twitter, okay? So I'm not going to leave you. Yes, Igor, you have a question.
Yeah. What do you notice in these big corporations about your ideas? Do they look at you like you come from another planet?
Yes, they do. This is why I've been an advisor to the biggest companies around the world for more than 10 years. The thing is, it's too simple for them. Like, they want me to come and tell them they should buy a big IT system or get a senior person from McKinsey. When it's so simple like this, they got confused. Like, they have not been taught at their MBA that things can be simple. And so when I start saying that this doesn't cost any money, this is a change of mindset, then they get confused.
And the difficulty is how do we create that mindset? How do you help them to get to the next level?
Well, you know how business world functions. So if they don't change, you know, people will start companies and will challenge them. And this is why this is such a disruptive time, because as I mentioned before, the most valuable companies today are created by people that are younger than 35, right? Who could see that come?
Yeah, true. Yeah, the difficulty is, I think what your key message is also mentality and DNA.
Absolutely.
No more bullshit, no more expensive, no more...
No, keep it simple. And it's actually about the high-tech costs, yes, but it's about the high touch. And the thing is, I don't know, I mean, you're represented from many countries, but it seems like the frontline people are the ones who are less educated and poorly paid, while the executives at the headquarters, they are good paid and really well educated. And the thing is, you actually have to do it reverse, since we have found out that the more educated you are, and the thing is, the less creative you are. And the thing is, if you have been employed in the same company for more than 4 years, you're 70% more dislikely not to appreciate changes. So actually, we should not allow people to sit as long as they do in companies. That's another thing.
No more golden watches for 25
no war.
years.
You have no war. No, that's
Okay.
not a good thing.
I want to thank you for being here.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
A lot of good luck in Paris tonight. Give her a warm applause. Soulaima Gourani.